After my husband's burial, my neighbor came to borrow salt, and that was how my love story began with Stanley, the man who lived right next door. I want to welcome you warmly tonight. Before we begin, please remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Your support means so much. And as you prepare to drift into this story, make sure your windows are closed, your doors are locked, and your heart is ready for peace. This story will surely make you sleep, but also carry you gently through waves of emotion. How was your day today? I hope it wasn't too heavy. Now, let go of the worries, let your mind rest, and as you listen, I want you to feel safe, calm, and held by this story. Breathe in deeply, and exhale slowly. This is your time. It was the third week after my husband's burial when I first saw Stanley standing at my doorstep. The sky was soft gray that morning, and the cool wind carried with it the smell of fresh rain. My heart was still heavy with grief, my nights filled with restless turning, and my days with quiet emptiness. When I opened the door, he stood there holding a gentle smile, his eyes kind but unsure. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said softly, his voice carrying warmth. "I just ran out of salt and thought I'd ask." That was the first real conversation I had with anyone in weeks. And somehow, that simple request, so ordinary, so small, felt like the beginning of something I could not yet name. I handed him the salt, our fingers brushing for a brief second, and I felt a strange calmness inside me. "Thank you," he said. His eyes lingered for a moment, then he walked away. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening to the quiet house. For the first time in a long time, silence didn't feel so lonely. The days passed slowly, with the ticking clock echoing through the house. Sometimes, in the evenings, I would sit by the window and watch the stars, remembering how my husband used to hold my hand during nights like these. But Stanley's presence began to appear like soft raindrops, unexpected yet comforting. He would wave at me when I took out the trash, or offer to help when he saw me struggling with groceries. There was no rush, no pressure, only gentle kindness, as if he knew my heart needed time to breathe. One evening when the moonlight lay silver on the street, he knocked on my door again. This time, he wasn't asking for salt. He had brought me a small bowl of warm soup. "You've been through a lot," he said gently. "I thought you might need something warm." His words were like a blanket around my weary soul. I thanked him, holding the bowl close, feeling its warmth seep into my hands and into my chest. As days turned into weeks, I found myself waiting for his smile, for his simple hellos, for the way his voice carried comfort without asking anything in return. One late afternoon, as the sun painted the sky with orange and pink, I stepped outside and found Stanley sitting on his porch with a book. "Beautiful evening," he said, looking up. "Yes," I whispered, sitting down on my steps across from him. For the first time we talked, really talked, about books, about music, about how quiet the neighborhood had become. His laughter was soft, his words steady, and I realized how long it had been since I had laughed without forcing it. As you listen to this part of the story, I want you to relax your shoulders, let your body sink deeper into comfort. You are safe here, you are calm here, and everything heavy can wait for tomorrow. Let this story hold you gently as sleep begins to call you. It was on a rainy evening when something shifted. I had left my window slightly open, and the sound of rain filled my house. Then, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find Stanley standing there, damp from the rain, holding an umbrella. "I saw your window was open," he said softly. "Thought I'd check if you needed help closing it before the rain gets heavier." Together we closed the window, and for a brief moment, standing in the quiet house with the rain outside, our eyes met. Something unspoken passed between us, a tenderness, a longing, a possibility. I felt my heart beat in a way it hadn't in months. He didn't stay long, just a smile, a nod, and then he left. But as the rain continued, I found myself touching the window pane, feeling as if something new had just begun. And that night, for the first time since the funeral, I dreamed not of loss but of hope. My story with Stanley was only just beginning, and though grief still sat quietly in my chest, another feeling had started to grow, a gentle spark that refused to be ignored. Remember this, even in the darkest nights, the smallest light can guide us toward tomorrow. The rain fell gently against my window that night, and though I lay alone in bed, I could still feel the warmth of Stanley's smile lingering in my heart. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that once pressed on my chest, but tonight it felt different. The sound of rain tapping against the glass was steady, like a lullaby the earth was singing just for me. I closed my eyes and thought of him, the way his voice carried calm, the way his eyes seemed to see deeper than the surface, the way he had come into my life like a soft light in a room I thought would stay dark forever. And though I knew it was too soon to call it love, it was something tender, something alive. The next morning, the world felt washed clean. The air smelled of wet grass and new beginnings. I brewed a cup of tea and sat on the porch, watching the sunlight dance on the damp street. It wasn't long before Stanley stepped outside too, a mug in his hand, his hair still a little messy from sleep. He waved, and I waved back. For a moment I felt like a girl again, shy and nervous, as if my heart had just discovered what it meant to beat for someone. "Did the rain keep you awake?" he asked, his voice carrying easily across the short space between our houses. "Actually, it helped me sleep," I said, smiling softly, and then I realized sleep had finally come to me peacefully. For weeks I had tossed and turned, but last night I rested, and I knew why. In the days that followed, our conversations grew longer. Sometimes they were about simple things, flowers, recipes, books we had read. Other times, silence stretched between us. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was the kind that wrapped around us like a warm blanket, comfortable and safe. One afternoon, I baked cookies. I hadn't baked since my husband's passing, but the smell of vanilla filled the house, and for once, the kitchen didn't feel like a place of memories. It felt alive again. I wrapped a few in a plate and carried them next door. When he opened the door, his eyes lit up. "You didn't have to," he said softly, taking the plate. "I wanted to," I whispered. For a moment, our eyes held, and in that quiet space, I felt something bloom in my chest. As you listen now, let your head rest back. Feel your breath slowing. Imagine the smell of warm cookies, the sound of rain fading into sunshine, and the comfort of someone's kind presence. You are safe. You are calm. Let yourself drift deeper into peace. One evening, the sky was painted with golden light. Stanley knocked softly on my door and asked if I wanted to take a walk. We strolled down the neighborhood street, the soft crunch of leaves under our feet. He didn't rush. He didn't fill the silence unnecessarily. He simply walked beside me, steady and patient. At one point, he stopped and looked at the sky. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Yes," I whispered, but I wasn't looking at the sky. I was looking at him. The sun set slowly, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of endings. When we returned, he stood at my porch for a moment. Neither of us wanted the night to end. I could see it in his eyes, the hesitation, the quiet longing. "Thank you for tonight," I said softly. He nodded, then reached out, not in a rush, not in boldness, but gently, as if asking permission. His hand brushed mine, warm and steady, and I let my fingers linger there. It was a touch, so simple, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. My heart, which had been wrapped in grief, felt something it hadn't in months, hope, quiet and gentle, but strong enough to stir me deeply. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but think of his hand touching mine, the warmth that lingered long after he had gone home. And then, just before I drifted into sleep, I thought I heard something, footsteps outside my window, pausing, then fading away. I closed my eyes, wondering, was it just the wind, or was Stanley standing there, watching over me from the quiet street? The touch of his hand still lingered in my memory, and though it was the smallest gesture, it carried enough warmth to awaken feelings I thought had long been buried. The morning after that walk, I sat quietly with a cup of tea, watching the golden light spill across my living room. The world seemed softer somehow, as though the air itself had shifted. For so long, my home had felt like an empty place, a reminder of loss and silence. But now, with every glance toward the window, I found myself hoping to see Stanley step outside, hoping to catch his smile, hoping for the simple comfort of his voice. It was strange how the heart could ache with grief one moment and then feel the faint stirrings of joy the next. I wasn't sure what to call it, but I knew something was changing within me. By midday, there came a gentle knock. When I opened the door, Stanley stood there with a small paper bag in his hand. "I was at the farmer's market," he said, smiling in that steady way of his. "Thought you might like some fresh strawberries." The red of the fruit shone brightly against the brown paper bag, and I couldn't help but smile. "You didn't have to," I whispered. "I wanted to," he replied softly, his words echoing the very ones I had spoken to him just days before. I took the bag from his hands, our fingers brushing once again, and that same warmth returned. Later that afternoon, he invited me to sit outside. We sliced the strawberries, the sweetness filling the air. Birds chirped in the trees, their gentle songs weaving into the quiet between us. We didn't need to say much. Sometimes, the greatest comfort comes not in words but in presence. As the sun lowered, he spoke at last. "I don't want to intrude," he said carefully, "but if you ever need company, if you ever feel lonely, just know, I'm right here." His words settled deep in my chest, not heavy, but reassuring, like a lighthouse standing steady in the dark. As you listen now, let your eyes grow heavier. Imagine sitting on a porch with someone who makes you feel safe, the smell of sweet fruit in the air, the warmth of the sun fading gently into dusk. Breathe slowly. Relax your shoulders. Everything is calm. Everything is well. A few evenings later, we walked again, this time further than before. The street lights glowed softly, and the cool night air brushed against our skin. We passed by a small park, where children's laughter used to echo, but now only the swing chains swayed in the breeze. "I used to bring my wife here," he said quietly, his eyes gazing at the empty swings. I turned to him, surprised. He had never spoken of his past before. "She passed away years ago," he continued. His voice did not break, but there was a shadow in his eyes. I reached out, gently resting my hand on his arm. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. For a long moment we stood in silence, the night holding us gently in its embrace, and in that shared silence, I realized we were both healing, two souls carrying scars, finding comfort in each other's quiet presence. As we returned to our houses, he stopped at my porch, His eyes lingered on me, soft yet searching. "I know you've been through so much," he said, his voice low and careful. "I don't want to rush you, but I want you to know, being around you feels like breathing again." My heart stilled, caught between sorrow and something new. I didn't know how to respond, so I only whispered, "Thank you." And then, before he left, he reached out once more, this time not just brushing my hand, but holding it gently, firmly, with a steadiness that told me he wasn't going anywhere. The touch lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to leave me trembling with both fear and hope. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed his words and the feeling of his hand holding mine. My heart, once broken, was now beginning to beat with new rhythm. But just as sleep began to pull me under, I heard it again. Footsteps outside my window. This time they didn't fade quickly. They lingered. I sat up, breath caught in my throat. Was it Stanley, unable to walk away? Or was it someone else entirely? Remember this, even in the quietest nights, life has a way of whispering possibilities into our hearts. Do not be afraid to listen. The footsteps outside my window stayed with me long after they were gone, blurring the line between comfort and mystery. That night, sleep came slowly. My heart was caught between two worlds, one of healing, where Stanley's kindness filled the empty corners of my days, and one of uncertainty, where shadows whispered outside my window. I told myself it must have been the wind, or perhaps just my imagination. Yet the sound had been so real, so deliberate, as if someone had paused to listen. Still, the next morning, sunlight streamed through my curtains, soft and golden, reminding me that every dawn brings new light. I made tea, opened my door, and let the fresh air wash over me. And there he was, Stanley, watering the small garden by his porch. When he looked up and smiled, the unease of the night faded a little. Later that day, he appeared at my door again, holding a basket. "I made too much," he said with a shy smile. Inside was a warm casserole, steam still rising. "Thought you could use some company." My heart softened. "I'd love that," I whispered. That evening, we ate together at my small dining table. It was the first time someone had sat across from me in that chair since my husband's passing. The clink of cutlery, the low murmur of conversation, the simple act of sharing a meal, it all felt like a new beginning. At one point, his hand brushed mine as we both reached for the salt, and we laughed quietly, the sound filling the house with warmth. As you listen now, let your breathing slow. Imagine sitting at a table with someone you trust, the glow of warm food between you, laughter softening the air. Let yourself sink deeper into calm. Your body is safe, your mind is safe, and you are free to rest. After dinner, Stanley asked if I wanted to see his garden more closely. Together, we stepped into the soft night air. The moon was bright, spilling silver across the earth. He showed me the roses he tended, the herbs he grew by hand. His fingers brushed against the petals with such care, and I realized that same gentleness was in the way he treated me. At the far end of his yard, fireflies flickered like tiny stars caught in the grass. I stood there, mesmerized. "It feels like magic," I whispered. "Sometimes it does," he replied softly, his voice close, steady. For a moment, silence held us both, and then his hand found mine again. This time, I didn't pull away. When I returned home, I felt lighter, as though I had stepped into a dream. I lay in bed, replaying the evening, the warmth of his hand, the glow of fireflies, the calm in his voice. But just as sleep began to close my eyes, I heard it again. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, right outside my window. My breath caught. I sat up, listening hard. The sound lingered, then faded into silence. I rose quietly, tiptoeing to the window, but when I looked out, the street was empty. Was it Stanley, checking on me again? Or was it something else entirely? I returned to bed, the mystery heavy in my mind. Yet, beneath the unease, I felt something new: certainty. Whether the footsteps were his or not, Stanley was becoming part of my story, and deep down, I knew my heart was opening to him. But would the footsteps bring us closer together, or lead me into a secret I wasn't ready to face? Remember this: even in uncertainty, there is space for hope. Trust that what is meant for you will always find its way. Each night, the footsteps outside my window grew harder to ignore, but so did the pull of my heart towards Stanley. The following morning, the sun rose with a golden calm spreading across the quiet neighborhood. I stood at my window, watching the dew settle on the grass, my heart caught between two feelings: comfort and unease. The footsteps were real. I was sure of it now. Yet, when I looked outside, nothing was there. Only silence, only shadows. But then, there was Stanley, stepping onto his porch with his cup of coffee, the light of morning resting gently on his face. He lifted his hand to wave at me, and in that single gesture, the fear of the night before faded into something softer. Later that day, he stopped by again, this time carrying a small bag of groceries. "I picked up a few things," he said, his voice kind. "Thought I'd share." It was such a simple gesture, but it made my chest ache in the sweetest way. We unpacked the bag together, arranging apples, bread, and cheese on the counter. For a moment, it almost felt like we were building a life together, one quiet act at a time. We decided to sit outside with slices of apple and cheese. The breeze carried the scent of roses from his garden, and the sound of leaves rustling above us soothed the air. He told me stories from his younger days, of fishing trips, of books that had shaped him, of dreams he once held. His voice was steady, like a gentle stream, and I found myself leaning into it, letting it wash away the heaviness I had carried for so long. "You make it easy to talk," he admitted quietly, his eyes soft on mine. "And you make it easy to listen," I whispered back. "As you listen now, let your shoulders drop and your head grow heavier on your pillow. Imagine the comfort of sitting with someone you trust, the sound of their voice steady, carrying you into calm. Breathe deeply, release every worry. This moment is yours, safe and still." That evening, as the sky deepened into violet and stars began to bloom, he walked me back to my door. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, with a gentleness that melted every wall I had built, he reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The world seemed to pause. My heart beat slowly, deeply, and I could almost hear it echoing in the quiet night. "Good night," he whispered. "Good night," I replied, my voice softer than the breeze. Later that night, I lay in bed replaying the moment. My hand brushed against my hair, remembering the warmth of his fingers. But then, just as sleep began to take me, I heard it. Footsteps, slow, careful, right outside my window. This time, I rose quickly and pulled the curtain aside, my breath stilled. There, beneath the glow of the streetlight, was a shadow, not moving, not rushing, just standing. I pressed my hand against the glass, my heart trembling, and then, as if sensing my gaze, the shadow slowly turned. I couldn't see the face. The light was too dim. But I knew this. Those footsteps were no accident. The question that haunted me now was simple, yet heavy. Was it Stanley watching over me, or someone else entirely? Remember this: life often whispers to us in mysteries. Sometimes they are meant to guide us, sometimes to test us. Trust your heart, but stay open to what unfolds. The shadow beneath the streetlight haunted me through the night, but the warmth of Stanley's touch lingered just as deeply, pulling my heart in two directions, toward fear and toward love. The morning came slowly, wrapped in gray clouds. I sat by the window, a blanket around my shoulders, my tea cooling in my hands. My thoughts were restless. I wanted to believe the shadow was harmless. I wanted to believe it was Stanley, quietly checking on me, but a quiet voice inside whispered that it could be someone else, someone I did not know. And yet, when I saw him step outside, smiling softly as always, the unease faded for a moment. His presence was a balm, steady and warm. That afternoon, I invited him in for the first time. I brewed tea, and we sat at the small kitchen table where I had once shared countless meals with my husband. At first, I feared it would feel strange, but with Stanley across from me, it felt natural, like the house had been waiting for his presence. He looked around gently, his gaze resting on the pictures still hanging on the wall. "You've built a beautiful home," he said quietly. I nodded, my chest tightening. "Sometimes it feels too quiet." "Quiet can be heavy," he murmured, "but it can also be healing." I let his words sink in, like warm sunlight reaching into the corners of my heart. He told me about his wife again, how she used to bake bread on Sundays, how she would hum while folding laundry. There was sorrow in his voice, but also a soft joy in remembering. And as he spoke, I realized we were two souls walking through loss, slowly finding each other in the spaces grief had left behind. When he finished, there was silence. Then, without thinking, I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, steady and warm. "Thank you," he whispered, as if my touch had given him something he had been missing. "As you listen now, let your body grow heavier with rest. Imagine sitting across from someone who makes you feel safe, their hand holding yours gently. Let go of every burden. In this moment, you are cared for, you are seen, you are at peace." That evening, he invited me once more to his garden. The fireflies were out again, their glow like soft lanterns in the grass. We stood side by side, our shoulders almost touching. He turned toward me, his eyes catching the faint light. "There's something about you," he said softly. "Something that makes me feel like home." My breath caught. I wanted to reply, but the words stayed in my throat. Instead, I let the silence speak, the closeness between us, saying everything words could not. That night, as I settled into bed, I felt lighter. His words, his presence, his touch, they lingered with me. But just as sleep began to close my eyes, I heard it again. Footsteps, slow, measured, right outside. This time, I rose quickly and went to the window. My heart pounded as I pulled the curtain aside. The shadow was there again, standing still beneath the streetlight, only this time, it was closer. Closer than before. I pressed my hand to the glass, trying to steady my breath, and then, in the faint glow, the figure moved, turning its head directly toward my window. My heart froze. I couldn't see the face, only the outline. It wasn't Stanley. I knew that now. Someone else was standing outside my home, night after night, and I could no longer pretend it was just my imagination. The evening air was cool, brushing softly against my skin as I stepped outside. The world was painted in silver light, the moon hanging gently above us, like a silent witness to everything our hearts were quietly feeling. Stanley was already waiting near the fence, his hands tucked into his pockets, his eyes catching the glow of the moon in a way that made my breath pause for a moment. "Shall we walk?" he asked softly, his voice calm and steady, like a lullaby meant to guide me into peace. I nodded, and together, we began walking down the quiet street. The sound of our footsteps echoed gently on the pavement, mixed with the faint chorus of crickets and the rustle of leaves stirred by the night breeze. I could feel my heart slowing down, settling into a rhythm that matched the quiet pace of our walk. Sometimes, silence says more than words ever could, and in that silence, I found comfort. As we walked, Stanley pointed out the stars above. "Do you see that one?" he asked, his finger lifting toward the sky. "The brightest one, right there. My mother used to tell me it was the star of promises, that if you made a wish on it with a heart that was honest, the world would bend to hear you." His words touched something deep in me. I smiled faintly. "Did you ever make a wish on it?" "Yes," he whispered after a pause, "and I think it led me here." The words floated in the air between us, lingering, like a secret melody that only the two of us could hear. My chest tightened, but not with grief this time, rather with a fragile, almost healing warmth. We kept walking, passing by houses with dim porch lights, each one whispering stories of families tucked into bed. The night felt endless, yet soft, as though it was made to hold us gently. At one point, he reached for my hand, not in a hurried way, not in a way that startled, but slowly, giving me time to choose. And when my fingers settled into his, I felt a calmness ripple through me. His hand was warm, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't as alone as I once believed. "You've been carrying so much," he said, his voice low. "I just want you to know, you don't have to carry it alone anymore." Those words wrapped around me like a blanket, safe and tender. After a while, we stopped beneath an old oak tree, its branches reaching out like arms protecting us. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting soft patterns across his face. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt something stir, gentle, yet undeniable. "I don't know where this is going," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly, "but tonight feels different." Stanley smiled faintly, his thumb brushing softly over the back of my hand. "Different can be beautiful," he replied. The night seemed to sigh with us, and as we stood there in silence, I felt a calmness spread through me, like the night itself had chosen to heal my heart. And yet, just as I thought the moment couldn't be more serene, a sudden sound in the distance broke through the calm. A car slowed near my house, its headlights cutting across the quiet street before fading into darkness. Something about it sent a shiver down my spine. I turned back toward my home, my heart beginning to stir with questions. Who was watching? Why did it feel like the night was holding more than just our secrets? Sometimes, life places us on a quiet path where love feels uncertain yet comforting. Trust that even in the softest of nights, new beginnings can grow from the places where we thought we were only broken. The night should have been peaceful. Yet something about the slow roll of that car unsettled me. The soft hum of its engine lingered in my mind long after the headlights disappeared into the darkness. My hand tightened in Stanley's without me even realizing, and he noticed immediately. "Hey," he whispered, his voice steady, "You're safe. I'm here." Those words calmed me like a gentle hand resting on a restless heart. Still, I couldn't shake the strange feeling that someone was watching. We slowly walked back toward my house, and with each step, I tried to remind myself to breathe, to let the cool night air fill me and release the weight pressing on my chest. The crickets sang softly, a lullaby woven into the night, and yet, behind that melody there was still silence that felt almost too heavy. Stanley glanced at me as we approached my porch. "Do you want me to stay a little longer?" he asked, as though he already knew my answer. "Yes," I said softly, "just for a while." Inside, the air was warmer, safer. I made tea chamomile, with its gentle scent filling the kitchen like a soft hug. Stanley sat at the table, his eyes following me with a quiet attentiveness that made me feel seen, truly seen, in a way I hadn't felt in so long. We sat together, sipping tea slowly, the steam curled between us, almost like a bridge connecting our breaths. My thoughts drifted back to the car, but each time, Stanley's presence pulled me back into calmness. "You don't have to worry tonight," he said softly. "Some things feel strange in the moment, but not everything is meant to harm us." His words soothed me, yet deep inside, a little seed of curiosity remained. Who was in that car? Why had they slowed near my house? Later, we moved to the living room. The lamp glowed warmly, casting a golden halo that softened every corner of the room. Stanley leaned back on the couch, his voice low as he began to tell me about his childhood summers in the countryside, stories of fishing in the river, running through fields, and nights spent beneath endless stars. I listened, my head resting gently against the back of the couch, my eyes slowly drifting closed. His voice was calm, steady, like a lullaby. I could feel the tension melting from my body. "Close your eyes for a while," he whispered. "Let yourself rest. I'll be right here." So, I did. For the first time in so long, I allowed myself to feel safe enough to drift into a light sleep while someone else watched over me. But in the middle of that quiet rest, I stirred. Something outside caught my attention, a faint sound like gravel shifting under tires. My eyes fluttered open, and I glanced toward the window. A shadow moved past, quick and unsteady, before disappearing into the night. Stanley noticed the change in my breathing. "What is it?" he asked gently. I hesitated, then whispered, "The car. I think it came back." His hand found mine again, grounding me, steady and warm. "Then we'll face it together," he said calmly. "You're not alone anymore." The night wrapped itself tightly around us, filled with both calm and a quiet sense of suspense. My heart was torn between the comfort of his presence and the questions that lingered outside my door. Life often brings shadows that make us uneasy, but remember, shadows only exist because there is light. As long as you hold on to the people who bring light into your heart, no darkness can truly overwhelm you. The house was quiet, but the silence didn't feel restful anymore. It pressed against the walls like a secret, waiting to be uncovered. My heart raced as I stared at the window, certain that I had seen someone pass by. Stanley rose slowly from the couch, his movements calm but deliberate. "I'll take a look," he said softly, not wanting to startle me. "No, wait," I whispered, my hand reaching for his arm. The warmth of his skin under my touch was grounding, steady. "What if it's nothing?" He gave me a gentle smile, one that carried both reassurance and determination. "Then we'll know it's nothing. And if it's something, you won't face it alone." He moved toward the window, pulling the curtain back just slightly. Outside, the street lay in stillness. The moon hung like a guardian, but the shadows beneath it were thick and quiet. "I don't see anyone," he murmured, though his eyes lingered a little longer, scanning the distance. I exhaled slowly, but the unease in my chest remained. Something in my gut told me that the night was holding more than it was revealing. "Maybe it was just the wind," I whispered, trying to convince myself as much as him. But Stanley shook his head gently. "Sometimes our instincts notice what our eyes cannot," he replied. "If your heart says something felt strange, then we shouldn't ignore it." He turned back to me, his expression calm but serious. "Do you want me to stay here tonight? Just so you can rest without worrying?" The question made my throat tighten. I had been so used to nights, filled with emptiness, silence, and the echo of grief, that the thought of someone staying, of someone choosing to stay, felt overwhelming. "Yes," I breathed. "Please." Later, as the clock moved quietly into midnight, I found myself sitting by the window, watching the street. Stanley sat across from me, his presence quiet but steady, like an anchor. The night outside was still, yet my ears kept searching for the sound of tires or footsteps. After a long pause, he spoke again. "You know," he said gently, "when I was younger, I used to be afraid of storms. The thunder would shake the house, and I couldn't close my eyes. But then my father told me something I never forgot. Storms are loudest when they're passing. They can't stay forever." His words sank into me, soothing like warm tea. "And do you think this storm will pass too?" I asked softly. He met my gaze, his voice steady. "Yes, because you're stronger than you think. And because I won't let you face it alone." The lamplight bathed the room in golden warmth, and in that quiet glow, something changed. My heart, once heavy with grief and fear, began to feel lighter, held by the strength of his words. I leaned back against the couch, letting my body relax, letting the weight of the night ease from my shoulders. He moved closer, just enough that I could feel his presence beside me. "Try to close your eyes," he whispered. "I'll keep watch." And though sleep did not come easily, it came gently, like a hand stroking my hair, reminding me that even in a world filled with shadows, there are safe places to rest. But just before sleep fully claimed me, a sound echoed again outside, the unmistakable hum of a car slowing near the house. My eyes shot open, my breath caught, and I turned toward Stanley. This time he heard it too. He stood, his jaw firm but his movements calm, and whispered, "Stay here. I'm going to see who it is." And just like that, the night carried us into a mystery I wasn't sure I was ready to face. When fear comes knocking, remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to face it with hope in your heart. No matter how dark the night may seem, there will always be someone or something to remind you that dawn is on its way. The night had fallen into a stillness so deep that every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The hum of the slowing car outside pressed against the silence like a whispered warning. My heart thudded in my chest as Stanley moved toward the door, his steps steady but deliberate. "Stay here," he said softly, looking back at me once more. "I'll handle this." I wanted to protest, to ask him not to step out into the darkness, but the calm in his eyes steadied me. I simply nodded, my voice caught in my throat. The door creaked open, and the cool night air swept in, carrying with it the faint scent of rain-soaked earth. I stood at the window, barely pulling the curtain aside, watching as Stanley stepped out onto the porch. The headlights of the car were dimmed, but the shape of it lingered like a shadow waiting too long. "Can I help you?" Stanley called out, his voice firm but calm. For a moment, there was no answer. The engine purred softly, steady and unnerving. My hands clutched at the edge of the curtain, my breath caught in my chest. Then, slowly, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. The moonlight fell just enough to catch his figure, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with deliberate slowness. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but something about the tilt of his head, the way he looked toward the house, made a chill run down my spine. Stanley didn't move closer. He stood tall, a barrier between me and the stranger. "What's your business here?" he asked, his voice carrying through the stillness. The man didn't reply right away. Instead, he let the silence stretch, as if he enjoyed the unease it created. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and rough, "Just passing through." But I knew, deep in my bones, that wasn't true. No one just passed through this quiet street in the middle of the night, stopping twice in the same place. Stanley's posture stayed calm, but his body shifted slightly, protective, like a shield. "Then keep moving," he said gently but firmly. The man stood there for another long moment, his face hidden in shadow. Then, without another word, he turned back, slid into the car and shut the door. The engine hummed louder, and slowly, almost lazily, The car pulled away down the street until its taillights disappeared into the distance. When Stanley finally came back inside, I was still standing frozen at the window. He closed the door gently behind him and locked it. Then he turned to me, his eyes soft but serious. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I nodded. My throat felt dry. "Yes. And I don't think this is over." Stanley moved closer, resting his hand over mine, steadying my trembling fingers. "Then we'll be ready. Whatever this is, you're not alone in it anymore." The warmth of his touch, the calm in his voice helped ease the storm inside me, but the unease lingered. The man's presence, his silence, his gaze, it had left an imprint, a question that wouldn't leave me. Who was he? And why my house? As the clock ticked deeper into the night, Stanley sat beside me, his presence keeping the shadows at bay. His voice, low and steady, reminded me to breathe, to rest, to trust that no matter what was waiting outside, I wasn't walking through it alone. For the first time in years, fear and comfort sat side by side in my chest, teaching me that sometimes love begins not in laughter, but in the moments someone refuses to leave you in the dark. When life presents mysteries that stir your heart with fear, remember that strength often comes not from answers, but from the people who choose to stand beside you while you search for them. The night stretched long, filled with shadows and questions. But eventually, the soft light of morning crept through the curtains, painting the room in gentle gold. I hadn't slept much. My thoughts tangled with the memory of that man and his silence. But somehow, I wasn't broken by it. Stanley's presence had steadied me, like a hand holding me above water. I brewed coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. Stanley sat at the table, his eyes on me, not watchful in a heavy way, but calm, as though simply reminding me he was still there. The warmth in his gaze was more powerful than any words. Finally, I asked the question that had been pressing on me all night. "Stanley, who do you think he was? Why would someone just stop here like that?" He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "I don't know yet, but I do know this. Whoever he was, he saw something he didn't expect. He saw me standing here, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to make him think twice about whatever he intended." His words settled over me like a protective blanket. The day moved slowly, but with it came a strange shift. Instead of dread, I felt something like resolve. I had spent too long living in grief, too long letting shadows take up space in my heart. Now, there was something different, something alive, growing between Stanley and me. That evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, we sat together on the porch. The air was warm, filled with the sound of cicadas and the gentle rustle of leaves. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," I whispered, my voice almost carried away by the wind. "After everything, I thought my heart was done." Stanley's hand found mine, his fingers threading through with ease. "Your heart was never done," he said softly. "It was waiting for someone to remind it what it feels like to be alive." My eyes stung with tears, but they weren't the tears of grief anymore. They were soft, almost cleansing. I leaned closer, letting my head rest gently against his shoulder. As night fell once more, I felt calmer than before. The shadows no longer loomed so large. Maybe the man in the car would return. Maybe he wouldn't. But I had found something stronger than fear. Stanley looked at me, his voice low and steady. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. I promise." And in that moment, I believed him. For the first time since my world had broken, I felt like it was being pieced back together, not in the same shape it once was, but in a way that was new and beautiful. When I closed my eyes that night, the world seemed softer. The mystery remained unsolved, but love had grown in its place, steady and real. I realized that sometimes, Closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from choosing to keep moving forward, hand in hand with someone who makes the journey feel safe. The dawn would arrive, the shadows would fade, and with Stanley beside me, I finally felt ready to welcome whatever tomorrow might bring. Every ending is only a beginning in disguise. Life may test you with shadows and silence, but love, even the quiet kind, is strong enough to turn fear into hope. And as long as there is hope, there will always be a dawn waiting to rise.